Welcome, one and all, to another day here at the Daily Report with me, John Iadarola, and joining us after evidently far too long, the host of the Luke Beasley Show. Luke Beasley's back. How's it going, Luke?
John, we were talking before we started that I'm trying this new thing where I just look at myself in the mirror and laugh before each day, and then I just pretend that I'm happy, and it's kind of working.
Yeah, I like that in theory. That kind of seemed more like crying to me, though. It didn't seem. Keep working at it. But anyway, it has been a while, and I know that because in our call before the show began, you hadn't seen our new background or whatever. Which obviously we're in a light and happy mood, which is why I'm wreathed in flame. But I know you've not only been working, you've been hosting your show, you've also been traveling. What's been going on in the world of Luke since last we spoke?
It just feels a little bit like every day's different in an insane way, but it's also kind of the same. I don't know if, are you referencing the Ukraine trip? I can't remember if that happened before or after our last one. Yes. I did go to Ukraine, went to the front lines. That was an insanely scary but eye-opening experience. And I think since then, it served as a reminder that often, especially with our constant news story, news cycle, always a new scandal, that there are a lot of stories that go unremembered. And one thing that's been weighing on my heart is even myself, I'm back to like, hey, Trump said something funky about coal, and forget the real human toll globally that's happening on a bunch of different issues. It's really easy to get distracted by Twitter and forget about the real people that we're doing this all for. And I think in a sense that can be sad, but in another way, it's kind of motivating to remember this isn't all just a big reality show. Real lives are being impacted, and that means our advocacy is that much more important.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that that's a good impulse to have, and maintain it as long as you can. And no, I think that's super important, and feeling an actual obligation for the work that you do to mean something, which weirdly, as you move up in the people with the biggest audiences that make the most money don't seem to have thought about that for the last 10, 20 years or whatever. That said, you can't cover everything. So don't put the entire world on your shoulders. You're doing a lot. You went to Ukraine, okay? So yeah, but no, you balance that. You know, the front line of Ukraine, the laugh crying into a mirror, like those things hopefully will balance out into mental wellness.
Yeah, anyway. I think so. And then people, and then I've been putting a lot of estimate. I feel like for the 2024 year, I just forgot that socializing is important. And so reintroducing that to my life has been incredible.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad that you're doing that. And collaborating with good people can really help. Like I was lucky enough, I told people that I was going to do this, but I recorded an episode of the Say What You Mean podcast with friend of the show, Ida Rodriguez, yesterday. And it was awesome. She's one of my favorite people. I just love talking with her. That'll be coming out soon. I'll let people know when it's available. But there's a lot of darkness out there. You got to find light wherever you can, sometimes in the form of people, sometimes in the form of socializing. Last year I took up golf, and I just like being out in nature without a device. Like it comes in a lot of forms. Some people really enjoyed Andor. Anyway, it comes in a lot of different forms. So anyway, we're gonna try to bring a little bit of light as we also delve into the darkness on today's episode of the show, because we will once again be talking about what the hell is going on with the Epstein files and the bizarre and insulting and insane cover-up that's going on. We will actually be talking a little bit about coal, which does have a big toll in terms of the damage it does to people. Hundreds of thousands of people die of respiratory illnesses around the globe thanks to coal and other fossil fuel use every single year, and a whole lot more besides. Congress has been busy trying to suppress the vote. We've got changes going on with the deployment of ICE to places like Minneapolis, and a whole lot more besides just that. We'll even be talking about Kari Lake, which we haven't done in a long time. Turns out that while we haven't been focusing on her, she has been maintaining a level of just clownish buffoonery that takes a lot of work and a lot of thought. So we'll have that. We'll have all sorts of stuff. So buckle up, buckle in, hit the like button, share the stream, send us your comments, your tweets, your super chats as we jump into this thing. And with all that said, Luke, are you ready to do it?
Everyone do it with me.
Okay, let's do it together. Avengers assemble. Okay, let's jump into this. Pam Bondi's behavior, her meltdown, her temper tantrum before the House Judiciary Committee yesterday was so utterly repugnant and unprofessional that if you acted like that at your job, you would have been canned on the spot. But for some reason, we have lower expectations for the Attorney General than we do for literally anyone watching this show right now. And so it got so bad that it's not just like people like me that are saying she should resign, that she's doing a terrible job. There are even some MAGA people that are like, this is getting pretty bad. Here's a sample.
This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged. Have you apologized to President Trump? Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump? Nothing about helping crime in her district. She's not even worth getting into the details. Excuse me, I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
and I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
You're a lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Arlen,
you don't get to reclaim time when you don't.
Bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question the way you want.
But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify.
Yeah, I bet they are going to move. You're the person. It's them and it's you. It's occasionally going to be you. That's sort of how these hearings work. But that was embarrassing. That was really embarrassing. And I know that a lot of Republicans they're prone to look at that and think, oh, she was strong. Or I mean, look at that. She was pointing and she was saying bad stuff to Jamie Raskin, who I hate for some reason that I can't clearly articulate. But not every Republican was actually won over by that. Kyle Rittenhouse came out of that hearing saying Pam Bondi needs to resign. And when you've lost Kyle Rittenhouse, well, I don't know as a general principle what that means, but it's certainly not what she was hoping for when she did that wild gesticulating performance. Nick Fuentes didn't like it. And she's super white too, so he's prone to like anything that she says. Eric Erickson, not a big fan. Tim Pool was mildly critical of her performance. Yeah, that should be enough to get rid of her. But of course, the reason that she did all of that is because Donald Trump wants her to put her dukes up and start throwing wild punches and everything. So yeah, even Mary Trump acknowledged that. That's what she's there to do. Not to find justice for the victims, not even to pretend that they care about justice for the victims, but just to seem like she can fight it out with the Democrats, even if it involves some absolutely wild lying. For instance, she told Congress that Maxwell was not transferred to a lower level facility. After originally saying that she wasn't really familiar with it, she said, no, it's the same level of security. It's not. There are literally parts of that prison where there's no fence. It's the honor system that you're being kept in on. They bring in animals for animal therapy there. That's not generally, I watched some Oz back in the day. There were no goats visiting. You were not playing with baby kittens. That was not an actual thing. And we have something that perhaps is even more, I don't know, distressing, worrying than all of that. But Luke, I wanted to give you a chance to jump in. It was a long, crazy day of testimony. What do you make of it?
It was crazy. Obviously set aside for a second the disgrace of that performance, given the subject matter. It was also just cringy and embarrassing. You know, like in high school TV shows, there's like the it girl who walks up and is the antagonist and is bullying the other girl. And then the it girl bully has around her like a whole entourage and she says something. Are those your shoes? And the people behind her like, yeah, owned. It's like Pam thought that's what was going to happen, that people would be like, oh, burn. Oh yeah, Raskin's a loser. But you could tell even the crowd behind her was like, what is she doing? Why is she acting like this? Why is she making this some roast? And then on a more substantive level, I'm sure you saw this photo, but there was a photo of her like refusing to look at the survivors as they were standing up and raising their hands. And that's gonna be Pam Bondi's legacy, is her literally refusing to turn around and look in the eye. And she's been refusing to meet with the survivors and prioritizing notes as to how she's gonna insult a particular Democratic lawmaker instead of actually getting justice.
Yeah. No, she should have brought her entourage. She should have, I don't know, hired Lacey Chabert or something to stand behind her. It was a mistake to not do that. You just made
literally snot come out of my nose.
Sorry, I apologize.
Maybe
and yeah, the unwillingness to turn around. Like, I feel like they've sort of gotten away from what all of this cover-up was supposed to be branded as, which is, we're the true protectors of women, but we also know that Trump didn't do anything. And they have just gotten so focused on the pretending Trump didn't do anything that they've gone so hostile against the victims of Epstein. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be pretending to work for justice, They haven't pretended that in literally months. Pam Bondi has a page, as you pointed out, of notes on attacks and vicious little quips against Pramila Jayapal and Jamie Raskin. I've never seen her say anything like that against Epstein or against Ghislaine Maxwell. She hates Jamie Raskin more than she hates the rapists. And I feel like at some point, her priorities gotten a little bit out of whack. But it isn't just the notes. It was worse than that. I want to jump now into this. One of the darkest, and I think really most worrying parts of Pam Bondi's testimony before the House Judiciary Committee yesterday was when it was revealed that they have apparently been spying on members of Congress, desperately trying to find out what the hell was going on with Epstein. Take a look.
The image that you're looking at right there shows on the inside front cover of that binder a one-page sheet that at the top says Jayapal Pramila search history. One possibility is that the Department of Justice can look to see how Congresswoman Jayapal, having some sort of like username, what her search history was with respect to it, and be prepared to address questions about what she saw in those files, in addition to any other quote unquote opposition research that the Attorney General had on her.
Okay, so they apparently, when they brought in the members of Congress to 3, like, I don't know, IMAX or whatever, and let them look at the documents, only there, now you can't do it remotely, you just have to do it there. They were also recording what they were searching for. And the person in the interview laid out one possible, maybe arguable, like good reason you would do that, which is, well, I know I'm gonna be asked questions about all this, and there's obviously so much, I wanna be prepared, I wanna be helpful, because I'm a serious person, a serious lawyer, and I'm taking this super seriously, so I want to bone up on all of what they searched about so I can answer their questions. But nobody believes that's what she was doing. Nobody thinks she was preparing so she can be helpful during the hearing. She didn't want to answer a single goddamn question. So that possibility that was laid out in the video that's gone. We're not pretending. We're not doing a clown show where we pretend that that's what she was doing. No, they are watching to see what they're looking for, because they do have an actual goal in this. The DOJ has a goal. It is not bringing down co-conspirators. It's not tracking down pedophiles. It's not protecting women or finding justice or anything like that. It is protecting people. It's protecting primarily Donald Trump, but a lot of other people too. Some of the billionaires, some of the donors, foreign politicians, leaders in business, those sorts of things. And so they're watching to see who is being checked up on by Pramila Jayapal, by Jamie Raskin, and let's also be clear, that video referenced Pramila Jayapal's search history, but as you'll see in this clip, it was not limited to Jayapal. Take a look.
It is a violation of the separation of powers for them to essentially be monitoring our computer searches on the Epstein file. So I think it's outrageous that they would do that, and it's Orwellian, and we're going to have some more to say about it soon.
Do you know if Congresswoman Jayapal was the only person?
We have reason to believe that it was happening to everybody who went over there, that they were monitoring everybody's computer searches.
And he gives no indication that they were told ahead of time that would happen. So I feel like that definitely is something that needs to be investigated. And Luke, it really feels like Pam Bondi has spent more time and effort investigating Pramila Jayapal than she has Epstein's co-conspirators, which is really sad. What do you think?
That tells the whole story. What's the priority here for her? As we've referenced now, it's not giving good answers. I mean, she's done so many things wrong now that this might be a lost cause, but she at any moment could decide to stand on principle and the principle of justice more specifically and transparency. And I think Democrats wouldn't even force those hearings to descend into chaos and name calling at all if she was giving good substantive answers. But as you referenced, there's something that's so indicative of this administration's priority on this issue for her to literally be spending time, as they tell us, they just didn't have enough time to release the documents in accordance with the law, which they still haven't released the majority of the documents. They don't have enough time to protect the victims' identities. They don't have enough time to realize that they're redacting, obviously purposely, perpetrators' name. People who are labeled as co-conspirators are having their identities protected. Oh, that was a mix-up. Sorry, it's just so many documents on time. But we do have time, to have staffers go through and build for Pam Bondi like Oppo research, and maybe just direct that time towards what we're asking you to actually investigate. And then another really indicative clip from this broader hearing was her saying, I don't know if you saw this, she said, you all should be apologizing to President Trump for attacking him. And then at one other part, she said, the reason that you're bringing this up, her point was, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was essentially the reason you're focusing on Epstein is because the Dow Jones is doing well and you're trying to distract from that. And it's like, I don't even know, I can't even put myself in the mindset of what world she's in where she thinks anyone, right, left, or center, hears her say stuff like that and thinks it makes any sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't imagine one right winger who would be like, I really do think that Biden and Harris were involved in this stuff, but oh, wait, my 401k just went up. Oh, I don't care about that anymore. Who needs justice for elite pedophiles? I'm going to retire well. No actual person thinks that way. And Pam Bondi doesn't even think that way. That's just, she needs some diversion. She needs some tactic, and it's a pathetic one. It makes her look clownish because she's not actually good at this. When you choose all of the people around you based purely on loyalty, you're not choosing based on talent, expertise, experience. By definition, you're choosing based on loyalty, and that's what he's done. And the lawyers suck. She's basically Alina Habba. That's all she is. They're all not good lawyers. They're not good researchers. Think about it, and I'll end on this. She is the AG. Can you imagine the feather in her cap that it would be were she to find and take down an Epstein co-conspirator? Oh my God, it turns out this billionaire was doing, I did an interview with one of the survivors, and then I went into the files, I started talking to people, and it turns out these people also committed sexual assaults, and I took them down. Think about it. Oh, our regime is so good at fighting crime or whatever. Is she even acting like that's a thing she would hypothetically want to do?
And it'd be so easy because she has the guy's number.
Exactly. Yeah, she has dinner with him all the time. No, like that is what a person who actually cares about justice would be going for, and she is not even pretending because she can't. She can't because Donald Trump does not want the government to legitimize the Epstein thing. He doesn't want any of them to act like this is a serious issue. You do not turn around and look at those victims, okay? You do not pretend that they are humans deserving of respect or compassion, because that would hurt Donald Trump's fifis, because he doesn't care about them and he doesn't care about the issue, and he is super, super scared about what might come out. And so that's why you get this ridiculous performance from a Pam Bondi. Now, I want to talk just for a few minutes about something sort of related. We've been talking on the show quite a bit about Donald Trump's falling poll numbers. It is perhaps not surprising with stuff like the Pam Bondi thing that his polling is going down, but what is happening potentially as a result of it, that is at least a little bit surprising, so let's jump into it. Your ability to know and quantify just how unpopular Donald Trump actually is might soon become a little bit more uncertain, a little bit more dicey, because one of the most crucial and respected pollsters, Gallup, just announced that after nearly a century of tracking presidential approval and the approval of other politicians as well, yet they're just done with that. And coincidentally, they're announcing that as Donald Trump hits the lowest numbers he's ever had, and coincidentally, they're doing it within just a few weeks of Donald Trump threatening to sue pollsters that report bad numbers for him. So that's like a lot of coincidences all at the same time, and I don't love it either. So let's dive into this, see what we can figure out. So they said that starting this year, they would stop publishing approval and favorability ratings of individual political figures, saying in a statement, quote, reflects an evolution in how Gallup focuses its public research and thought leadership. Thank you, ChatGPT. That is a very nice and vague statement that you've presented there. The company did not explain why it no longer considers the president like the leader of the free world's approval rating as like an important issue that shapes people's lives. They just didn't actually say anything about that. Now, we do know that his most recent numbers in Gallup are at 36%. It's among the lowest any president has ever had. It's not literally the lowest in Donald Trump's defense. Harry Truman, Richard Nixon, George W. Bush, they scored in the 20s towards the ends of their terms. So it can get worse. Maybe it will get worse. We'll see. We just won't have the numbers from them. And I do want to remind everyone of the multiple times that Donald Trump has threatened to sue pollsters. So there was this True Social post. This was about 3 weeks ago, saying the Times Siena poll, it's always tremendously negative. They'll be added to my lawsuit. And they want them to keep all their records and how they computed these fake results. You don't have to put computed in quotation marks. I believe that they computed the results. It's not, they actually did it. And I'll never understand. Well, I know he's not being honest, but if he were being honest, if they just make it up, if they just make up negative poll results to make you look bad, why were your poll results higher last year? Why didn't they make them up last year? Why did they make you seem more popular then? That doesn't make any sense. And there's other True Social messages too. Now, they're never going to admit that this is why they're doing it. And I can't prove that this is why they're doing it, Luke, but it feels timely. What do you think?
It does, and to your point, really, this feels like one of the most obvious things. Let's say you were doing downsizing and you had to limit downsizing. I've been recommending downsizing. I got here, and you were trying to remove some of the research resources that were required. This would be like the last thing to go.
Yeah,
this feels like the most relevant thing that they do, the most easily cited from an average American. Like, what does Gallup do? You'd be like, oh, I feel like I've seen an approval rating maybe of the president. And so it does feel timely. And just, I just was on Piers Morgan's show yesterday, and it hasn't come out yet. But one of the things that caused me to kind of lose my cool was that we spent 30 minutes talking about, should athletes be speaking out about politics or should they not? And like nothing productive. And then towards the end, Piers was like, we have a little bit more time. Let's talk about, and John, just a little trivia. Can you guess which topic you want to talk about next?
Is it trans people?
Trans athletes. You're right. There it is. And so
I wasn't there, for the record.
No, he doesn't know. It's not out yet. And so I kind of lost it because even looking at this, as you were referencing the lawsuits, you think about this unprecedented, aside from Gallup, whether this was influenced by Trump or not, it is a reminder as you go through the reasons why it might not be a coincidence of the brazen authoritarianism of Trump. This story kind of went underreported, but a grand jury, which this is pretty hard to do, not a single grand juror was willing to approve of charges against Democratic lawmakers who reminded military members of what is already the law, which is they aren't supposed to follow illegal orders. And Trump threatened or said it would be justified to kill those Democratic lawmakers, and then actually tried to get his DOJ to arrest them for saying something that is their right and that is also true based on the law. And meanwhile, he's suing outlets and then using his government power to try to force them into settlements, which are sort of like a bribe to get him off their back. He tried to sue into oblivion Ann Seltzer for that poll that he didn't like there. Luckily, she won that case. And this is what authoritarians do to get any bad information out of the public view. Yeah. And so I bring up the Piers example because in that context, for there still to be so many quote unquote unbiased journalists who choose to fuel salacious culture wars at the expense of our literal democratic republic makes me really sad.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And I'm a little bit torn because generally, like ideologically, based on my makeup, I think that everybody should be able to talk about politics, including athletes. But on the other hand, that if they were banned from talking about politics, we might not have to see Riley Gaines' face anymore. So, well,
she's not an athlete; she's a civil rights leader.
Yeah, maybe you have to actually win a competition to be considered an athlete for this. Also, just I love the transition on Piers Morgan. Again, I didn't see the show or whatever, but what I love about it is, like, should athletes be talking about politics? Really, athletes? What does athletics have to do with politics? Okay, let's now transition to, we're going to be banning some athletes based on their gender identity. We're going to take them down, hunt them down. Like, oh, so it is political. So maybe they should have a perspective on this stuff. Piers Morgan. Anyway, okay. Well, yeah. It's a final point on this. Great that. So you're going to cut something, and it's going to be the one thing people want out of Gallup. Yesterday on the show, we reported on a different thing that Gallup covers, which is like people's estimation of how optimistic they are about the future, and that's useful. I like having that. But you can cut that before the approval rating thing. Like that's, I think, a way more peripheral issue. Do people approve of what the president is doing is like the main thing that a poll is supposed to be able to say. And for some reason, they're going to be cutting that one. Final thoughts.
Just to add too, in terms of a dystopian future we're headed towards, and when I say some of these things, it's about aligning so that we understand the logic, the actions of the Trump administration with the authoritarian playbook. It's not to say they're going to accomplish all the things that I'll list off as frightening efforts, but why logically would a leader, would a president want people to not report on their approval? It's not like we won't see in free and fair elections the manifestation of those bad numbers. So normally you would want the numbers to be known so that then you could campaign accordingly. The only reason in my mind that you would not want accurate polling is because you also don't want accurate elections and you don't believe that they will be in the future.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there. Okay, so we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, Congress has been a little bit busy. We need to break it down after this. Okay, I see questions in the audience about whether I am wearing makeup, and people are saying it's fairly common with on-camera work, which it is. You use, like first of all, I put like lotion on or whatever, but sometimes you like powder so that lights don't make you like shine or whatever. But no, I'm not wearing blush. I'm sick actually. So if my face is a little red, it's because I have a cold right now. So I apologize about that. But anyway, let's jump into some comments and see what's going on out there. Let me scroll. Okay, in the members' comments, Dragons Don't Know I'm Not Real Bacon says, Harrington must be absolutely distraught over the loss of polling data. Yeah, this is actually, spare some thoughts for Harrington. His morale is down deep with the Titanic. Poor guy. Anyway, it is, I imagine that they're gonna have to backtrack. I mean, that is presidential, what is that? 90% of what the point of Gallup is? I mean, I guess they do like individual election polling and stuff too, but like, come on. Anyway, okay, let's see. LP Revolt Dragon says, it was the lead, poison, and gas over previous years that has these fools thinking Trump helping them make money is more important than Trump being a pedophile. Also, like, couldn't you hope for both? That the stock market's doing well and pedophiles go to jail? Like, I don't think, that doesn't seem like a high bar to me. That feels pretty minimal. Anyway. Oh, CDN Norstock Dad says in a super chat, worked for Gallup here in Canada back in the 90s. They are super biased for right-wing politician. A lot of questions were biased too. That's interesting. I've never really gotten the impression that Gallup is super biased. Their polling doesn't seem out of whack like a Rasmussen or something like that. So that's interesting. Yeah, maybe some of the specific lower level questions that they ask could have an angle on them, I guess. Okay, let's see. Kara says, Farron Cousins said that in Florida, if anyone knows of a crime against a minor and don't report it, it's a third-degree felony. This is separate from mandatory reporters. So that is, I'm sure, referencing in the Epstein files, Donald Trump apparently saying in an interview back in 2006 that everybody knows what Epstein's doing with those young women. So I've been wondering since we reported on that, why didn't you tell anyone then at that point? And by the way, when we were referencing how Pam Bondi lied under oath, one of them is when she said that there's no evidence that Donald Trump committed a crime. That is evidence that Donald Trump committed a crime. It's not proof that he committed a crime, but it is certainly evidence of it. And you are lying about that because you care more about Donald Trump than you do about actual justice. Okay, let's see. Cabbage says, being Trump's lawyer tells you everything about her skills because Trump can't find a lawyer with skills. See Giuliani. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even think technically, like she's talking about washed up, humiliated lawyers. I think Giuliani's pretty much at the head of that pack. And also lashing out when like you look at Donald Trump's pack of lawyers, come on, Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, Alina Habba, that woman that like a judge told her she had to stop saying she was an attorney because she wasn't actually. You're lashing out at other lawyers. Meanwhile, by the way, was in the DHS or whatever, they can't find lawyers to work on some of this ICE related stuff because nobody wants to work with them. Like, you guys are the problem with legal help, not us. Anyway, Gemma Lee says, I am more convinced than ever that Pam Bondi is herself a predator rather than just a petty criminal. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any necessary evidence of that. I mean, the closest evidence would be that she has for years and years and years at one level or another been involved in this cover up. And you would think that if you were that comfortable with protecting pedophiles, you're not like super hardcore opposed to it, but we don't have any evidence that she herself engaged in anything. So I'm gonna limit myself to what I can say more confidently. Okay, everybody, if you're just joining us now, please hit the like button as we jump into more news.
By voting for the Save America Act, House Republicans did exactly what the American people sent us here to do. It's promises made, promises kept. Ensuring the integrity of elections is an essential issue. It's essential to maintaining our constitutional republic, and everybody in this country seems to understand and agree to that. This is about a 90-10 issue in the polling, because all that we've done tonight in this simple piece of legislation is apply common sense.
Yeah, you probably don't need me to point out the various ways that Mike Johnson was lying there. I think you can tell by the smarmy little crap-eaten grin on his face as he says it. Oh, he's so happy with himself. We did exactly what the American people sent us to do, make it harder to vote. That is, after all, what everybody's pining for. It's not a 90-10 issue, obviously, and it's also thankfully unlikely to actually be signed into law, although, knock on wood on that. But what was pretty ridiculous was the actual vote. So you had all the Republicans. That's pretty bad. I mean, there's even some Senate Republicans that are like, this goes too far. This is effectively trying to nationalize elections, all that stuff. But meanwhile, in the House, there was not one single Republican that had an issue with it. Not even the sometimes good ones like a Thomas Massey or something. Nope, they were all on board. And not just them. One Democrat voted for it. That being, Henry Cuellar voted for it. So that's wonderful. Now, if you're not familiar with this bill and what it would do, it does a lot of different things. They're focusing on the thing that requires voters to show photo identification in order to cast a ballot in person. And it slaps new rules on mail-in ballots, which they want to stop because that makes it easier for people to vote, requiring voters to submit a copy of an eligible ID when requesting and casting an absentee ballot. Now, obviously, there are some issues with that. The first being that not everybody has the sort of identification necessary under this bill, and it is pretty restrictive. For instance, student IDs will no longer be valid for this sort of thing. Interesting that. I wonder why they would knock out eligibility for the sort of ID that young people use. Weird. It's almost like they don't actually care about young people, no matter what they say about TikTok. And so analysts currently say that something like 21 million Americans lack ready access to the documents that Republican legislation would require in order to be able to vote. That is not evenly distributed across the population, not even close. There's not a billionaire in the country that doesn't have ID, but there's plenty of poor people. And by the way, some of the identification that you would need to be able to vote under this is not free. It's not just inconvenient to get. It can be as much as $150 or more. So this is, in actuality, a poll tax for people who don't currently have identification. They would need to shell out money that they don't have, and they have even less of thanks to Donald Trump's tariffs, to just be able to vote. And then there's a number of other issues on there. Like, for instance, if your last name doesn't match your birth certificate, there are additional obstacles that you might have to jump over. Now, that can, in theory, be a problem for almost anyone, but it's especially a problem, as many have noted, for people who have changed their last name. Now, why would millions of one group of people have changed their last name? Have you heard of marriage and how often women change their last name? They will have a harder time voting. And oh, what do you know? Just like knocking out the young people, women who aren't as likely to like Donald Trump, they might have a harder time voting. So Mike Johnson can get up in front of a camera and be like, oh, this is just what everyone wants. No, this is what Republican leadership wants, because they have never greeted negative polls or a hard election cycle by saying, what can we do to appeal to the voters? The answer has always been, what can we do to make fewer voters that we have to deal with? Luke, again, we don't know if this is actually going to pass in the Senate, but what do you make of it as of right now?
John, you impressed me. That was so brilliantly laid out, my goodness. Because it's I think it's a difficult one to explain sometimes to someone who's not immersed in politics, because the branding from Republicans kind of sounds like it makes sense. They go, don't you think you should identify yourself to vote? And you're like, yeah, of course. And the truth is, of course, there's a bunch of different ways that you have to and can, depending on the state, identify yourself. Yes. What they're doing is trying to close the window of options tight enough and then sort of gerrymander the options like, oh, this one's good, but this is not, that perfectly fits their voter suppression ambition. So it's so convenient that the rules they're laying out, as you said, would have disproportionately suppressive outcome on women and young people.
Yeah.
I wonder why that's perfect for them. Obviously, those groups are more likely to vote for Democrats. And then this comes right after, as you referenced with the nationalized elections phrase, Trump explicitly said that. And I know that our world is just so crazy that every scandal has to only be a one-day scandal that would otherwise be a multiple weeks-long scandal with any other president. But he said in an interview, the president said, we should take over elections in certain states that essentially vote a way that I don't like. He said explicitly, Republicans should nationalize elections in these blue states. And I know this little thought experiment has been way overdone, but just imagine Republicans' reaction, the big government tyranny that it would be described as if that were a Democrat talking about red states. And then lastly, 100%. To give you a sense of how much we should trust them on election-related issues, just remember, when they talk about elections being stolen or the risk of them being stolen, in recent memory, maybe in all of American history, there was one president who really tried to steal an election, and it was Trump in 2020. And I think that gives you a sense of their credibility on this.
100%. And that is why I think people should be so suspicious of all of this. When they say, hey, we just want the election to be secure, that, if you don't know much about elections, seems very reasonable. But it seems really insane to keep saying that when you have not established that the elections are anything other than perfectly secure. So throwing up additional roadblocks to voting when there's no evidence that there's voter fraud seems really weird. It doesn't seem like common sense. Like if I told you, I want your house to be secure, so I've added an extra padlock to your front door. I mean, you want a secure house, right? Now, do you have a key for it? Oh, you don't have a key? Oh, that's okay. You can go get a key. It'll be like $150. But you want a secure house, right? And actually, I really want your house to be secure. So I'm gonna have a certain window of hours in which you can go into your house just to make it more secure. And I'm gonna put a little bar, super heavy, difficult to open, but you do want a secure house, right? If you've never had your house be broken into, that seems insane. You should have to establish an actual issue before you fix it. But they've come at it from the opposite direction because security is not the issue. The voting is the issue, and they don't want it to happen. And I'll end with this. We referenced the young people. Do you know how bad it's gotten for Donald Trump with young voters? We are 1 year in his first term. His approval rating amongst Gen Z adults is at 25%. It was at 52% last February. He has lost more than half of those Gen Zers that actually approved of him in just 1 year. His numbers, by the way, have also cratered amongst young men generally too. So this is why they're getting more frantic. This is why they're getting so worried. It's because they know that people don't actually support them. Now, with that said, why don't we turn to another important issue that's been super in the news during the time between the last time we had Luke on and now. So I want to get his thoughts on this, but let's jump into it. Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like we've done it. We've won, maybe. Take a look.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through the next week.
So that seemed important. I'm not sure what was going on. I feel like a right winger, like listening to the Super Bowl halftime show. I don't know what he's saying, man. But anyway, so that was Tom Homan saying that they're, I guess, done in Minneapolis. Dun, 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 dun. First of all, don't get ahead of yourself. It ain't over till it's over. And them saying it's over don't mean that it's over. Not for Minneapolis and not for, well, where are they gonna send those agents? Do you think those agents are retiring? Do you think that they're just going home to, like, I don't go back to their like second love, which is abusing their wives or whatever? No, like they're gonna go to some city. They're gonna be messing with somebody. So vigilance is still just as necessary as ever. Now, they do say they have reasons for being able to draw it down. So Homan cited eventually unprecedented level of cooperation between federal agents and local law enforcement. It's weird. They were saying that's why they needed to be there was because there was no cooperation. Now apparently it's all hunky-dory. Also, that there's been a crackdown on protesters, so they don't have to worry about the protesters. I would argue they never had to. The protesters weren't violent. It was ICE and Border Patrol that was violent. And also that local jails have been more willing to notify ICE of the release date for individuals the agency was targeting. I have never seen any evidence that they weren't already doing that. So this all seems artificial. This seems like nonsense and might indeed be a lie. It could potentially be good news though, so let's not rule that out, I guess. The bad news is that so far, there seems to be no appetite whatsoever from the Trump administration for any restrictions or reformation at all on ICE. And thankfully, the Democrats who have been demanding that lest they cut DHS funding are not backing down yet. They'll probably back down in a couple weeks. But for right now, they're holding strong. They said that the White House has only given vague assurances that there will be some kind of body cameras, which is something that the Trump administration was already talking about doing. So I don't see that as a big compromise. In terms of warrant requirements, restrictions on excessive force, limits on masks, new training, all of this, by the way, which is very limited reforms on ICE, that doesn't go nearly far enough for me. The Trump administration has said no to all of it as of right now. So hopefully the Democrats will actually do what they said they would do, which is to then cut the funding. But that remains to be seen, Luke. What do you think?
That's my take on it. I was inspired by Tom. So this is the thing. This is the thing about politics and about this particular era, which is that, see, Tom, this is how you speak normally, which is that it actually does matter. And by it, I mean our activism, our voices, the protests, outrage at what's happening. And I think that, to reference the authoritarian playbook again, I think that Trump feels like he can win and that he can sort of figuratively beat people into submission, and sometimes literally, if he makes us all believe that none of it really matters. Our activism doesn't, our votes, like we talked about last segment, won't, and that we should just give up. And I think this is an example of, even as heinous as the Trump administration has been on this issue, even Tom Homan, who the world's crazy when they send him in to be the voice of reason, even him, who's obviously really intense and extreme on this, feels like they messed up. That's all this is. They feel like, in the eyes of the public, maybe even morally, somewhere in their black hearts, that they messed up and they did something wrong. And that's the only reason they would reverse course on this. It's not because, as they'll say, we accomplished everything that we wanted to, or, well, now local authorities are actually giving us what we want. It's because they saw just how catastrophic their actions were, and they're backing off. And to your point, I think that that's in a time like this, something that should make us feel positive, however horrific the backdrop is of why it got here. And I think that now I see a lot of people, just recently talked about one in my view on my show, there's a lot of influencers who I think are fueled off of a little bit of nihilism, and it's become almost cool and edgy to think that nothing ever really changes and leaders don't really matter and our voices don't really matter, and they do. And if, even though we can't yet vote these people out of office, if we can do a little bit of good with our voices, that actually does matter.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think this should make us feel better about what we've done. I'm not even talking about like just media. Media is the literal last step in this. But like when you look at like these polls that show that more than twice as many independents say that ICE should be entirely abolished as say it should continue the way it is right now. Like, that's not what those numbers looked like a year ago. And they got that way because we actually know what ICE and Border Patrol are doing. And the reason we know that is because people were in the streets in Minneapolis. They were there as legal observers. They were there filming on their phones. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't know, and we wouldn't have had these results. Like, we would have just heard, woman was shot. I guess she tried to run someone down with her car. Guy was shot. I guess he was trying to massacre Border Patrol or whatever. But thankfully we know, because there's awesome committed people with the right values on the streets willing to literally put their lives on the line, and in some cases lose their lives, to make sure that people know what's actually going on. We try to do what we can here. to make sure that they feel acknowledged and appreciated, but there's no amount of that will be enough for all that they do and the bravery that they show. Okay, with that said, I think that we should take our second break. We got more news, some dark news actually on the other side of this. By the way, thank you also to the mods on YouTube. We've been having some spam and bots and all that stuff. So thank you to those who are getting rid of that. There was a great comment.
DM me for a big butt. Do you get those comments?
No, I didn't. No, actually, I'm curious now.
We have
just a DM, that's all you need?
We have an army of bots that will go like really nasty stuff.
Nice. No, mine tend to be racist, actually, unfortunately. Conservative Wambulance says, Luke's impression of Tom Homan sounds like a Murloc. I don't know if you were a World of Warcraft player back in the day, but yeah. Anyway, some people were saying it's a Charlie Brown teacher or Kenny from South Park, yeah. Anyway, okay, let's see what's going on in the members' comments. Cray Cray Souffle says, lest we forget another big voting block, kids that were adopted, despicable. That's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that. Thank you for putting that on my radar. Tio says, this is the way of waging war on the poor. Yeah, by the way, they always do these exact same ones. That's what voter ID has always been about. That's why every voter suppression bill, like generally there's a big racial component, but then there's also always students are attacked in that. And I love that, by the way. I love that, like, there are conservatives in college. And I often wonder, what do they think about the fact that Republicans are always so ready to set their votes on fire? Like, don't you think that your vote should matter? They hate you. They don't want you to. They're willing to sacrifice that if it gets rid of 2 Democrats.
Do you remember that leaked audio of some Republican consultant or something talking about how upset they were that a polling place got put close to a college, and she was like, college students will just be able to roll out of bed and go vote or something to that effect? Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Like, yeah, what do the young TPUSA Republicans think about that?
Exactly. No, 100%. Yeah, and also, and I know that I have to stop assuming that everybody, like across the political spectrum, has some similar values, like wanting people to participate in democracy. That is just not a thing that everybody has. But I feel like, imagine if you found yourself in a position where you're like, no, I don't want it to be so easy for this group to vote. I want it to be easy for every group to vote. I don't want conservative students to have a hard time voting. I don't want elderly evangelicals to have a hard time voting. I don't want white security moms that are weirdly deferential to their misogynistic husbands to be able. I want them all to be able to vote. And then I believe with an actual free market of voting, we can still kick their ass with better ideas and better policies. But that is not how they feel. Everything is about getting voting as small as possible, manipulating it. And I find that to be so utterly pathetic. Anyway, CDN No Stock Dad, thank you for gifting a membership on YouTube. Super nice of you. Elizabeth is a member, became a tier 2 member, actually. Thank you so much for that. PH Dutton has been a member for 40 months. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Justin Other Dragon, member for 20 months, says, Luke, great job sitting down that Tyler jackass. Is that a reference to an interview you did recently? I'm not familiar with that.
I sat him down hard.
What happened?
I just debated this Daily Signal guy, and we talked about Don Lemon's arrest and then gay marriage, and he's supporting this organization that's seeking to overturn Obergefell. And many people say that he left with his tail between his legs.
I like to hear it. Yeah, I love that they're bringing that back, getting rid of gay marriage. Like, remember for like years and years, they're like, it's gonna be the end of civilization. It's gonna ruin everything. And it's like, it's been legal for over 10 years. And what bad thing happened as a result of it? Like, it literally, we were saying at the time, it has nothing to do with you or your life. And we were proven totally right, but they still want to get rid of it. Okay, everybody, more news to come, but first I want to remind you about a partnership TYT is doing with Noble Mobile, the only wireless plan that pays you to use your phone less. On their Noble plan, you get unlimited data for just $50 a month, and starting today, you can actually get $40 off your first month and try it out for just $10. Plus, the unused data that you don't use gets you cash back, and you can find out more information at tyt.com/switch. And with that, let's turn to something grotesque, bit of a trigger warning for you, but we do have to address it. We unfortunately have yet another case of yet another pardoned January 6er being convicted of yet another crime after Donald Trump released them back out into our streets. This one you can see right here is Andrew Paul Johnson was just convicted of child sexual abuse. And I want to remind everyone, had he not been pardoned, he would not have been able to engage in the child sexual abuse that he got up to. Thankfully, it was discovered. He has been convicted. That's the good news. We're going to give you the details. On Tuesday, a jury in Florida found Andrew Paul Johnson guilty of 5 charges, including molesting a child under 12 and another under 16, as well as lewd and lascivious exhibition. Johnson was acquitted of 1 charge of sending sexual material to a child. He now faces up to life in prison when he's sentenced in March. Assuming Donald Trump doesn't pardon him again, I guess. I don't think he'll do that. Not because of the child sexual abuse stuff, but because I'm guessing he's not a billionaire. He'll probably stay in jail. By the way, a police report from the Fernando County Sheriff's Office filed as part of the case described a pattern of abuse, including both physical sexual abuse and exposing his genitalia to children that took place over a many-month span. One of the victims was 11 years old at the time of the abuse. And then there's also this. The child said that he confronted Johnson, who apologized and told the child not to tell anyone, quote, since he would get in trouble. Johnson then mailed the child an iPhone and told him to keep it a secret, but that wasn't the end of it. The sheriff's office said in an affidavit that Discord messages showed Johnson sneaking to the child's home to take him food and hang out with him. He also told the child that, quote, since he was pardoned for storming the Capitol on January 6th, he was going to be awarded $10 million as a result of being a, quote, Jan 6er, that he would then put the child in his will to take any money he had left over. So the connection between these 2 acts was even more explicit than you might have thought. And this is a pattern that we have been reporting on. There are at least 33 pardoned insurrectionists now facing other criminal charges. And so again, oh man, under Biden, if there was a migrant who came into the country 50 years ago and then committed a crime, they'd say it was Biden's fault. This is literally Donald Trump's fault. If they had stayed in prison, they would not have committed any of these crimes. But Donald Trump released them, and they have been on a crime spree ever since. Luke, what do you think?
It's interesting. Well, number one, obviously, just a sickening story. And then it's interesting that you noted this, because what I was going to start my response with was, if he had been a rich friend of Trump's, he would have gotten away with this. And that kind of gives you just some weird connection of events in a few ways to embody how twisted this moment is. The most obvious direct connection is that he was freed by Trump, and not just freed, but described as a patriot. Yeah. And there was like a weird culty song they would play in honor of, or I guess they would play the choir, January 6th choir's national anthem at Trump rallies to honor these people. And then he thought he was being so honored that he used the fact that he was a January 6ther to like silence the kid.
Yeah.
That's how directly connected this is. And then the final element, and you kind of referenced the hypocrisy, but whenever you have a criminal who commits a crime and it goes viral and the right wing picks it up, and if you have any proof that this person was maybe charged with a crime before and then released, if they can at all loosely connect it to like lax law and order policies of Democrats in some blue city, then they show that as proof that it's directly a Democratic politician's fault.
Yeah.
And here, and sometimes you go, hey, maybe there was a policy that was wrong on some law enforcement issue, and maybe there should be some flack. But on this, it's so clear. It's not like, well, the system before Newsom got into office kind of already had a rule about this. But maybe if you loosely, it's literally Trump releases him from prison, he abuses a child.
Yeah.
And how there's not more outrage from the supposed child protectors who say, which this is falling apart in many ways for them, obviously, but who say we can't have drag queens because we care about the children so much.
Yeah.
Are silent on this.
100%. Yeah. And by the way, this isn't the only one that specifically committed child sex crimes. There were 6 6 of them. Jan 6 actually committed child sex crimes. 2 were charged with other rapes. There's child pornography charges. There's gun charges. And none of those crimes would have committed if Donald Trump hadn't released them. And by the way, as Iadarola pointed out, normally we would not have reported on any of this because the stock market was doing so well. But today it dropped, the Dow Jones dropped below 50K. So we are actually allowed to report on pedophilia. Pam Bondi, lest you attack me. Anyway, we have one more story, I think, to close out there. Do we have time? We have time? Yeah, we can do this one. Okay, this is a light story anyway. Let's jump into this. Kari Lake, Kari Lake, she's now been outed as hanging out at the White House for literally hours in the lobby, hoping to run into Donald Trump so that she can beg him to endorse her for yet another ill-fated run for office. And I just love it. Apparently in October, she was spotted in a White House lobby, hoping to see Trump. Kari has been here for hours, a White House aide said. She's going to run and she's asking for the endorsement. Luke Lake, who was rumored to be mulling a run for Congress in Arizona, eventually shared her pitch with it to a low-level aide who conveyed no enthusiasm for a third Lake candidacy. The other Republican operative that talked to The Atlantic offered a similar account. That is just so sad. Not that just that she's waiting, but then she's like, okay, well, I can't talk to Trump. I guess I can talk to one of the aides or the interns that he's trying to have an affair with, and maybe that will help me out, I guess. And they're not even interested in Kari Lake. Apparently, when asked for comment on this, Lake responded in a statement saying that, quote, every shred of this question is incorrect, which is not the same thing as saying it didn't happen, by the way. Quote, the president has always been very gracious and generous when I have requested time with him, except evidently in this particular case. Anyway, she was asked if she is actually going to run for office again, and she only responded saying, if and when I decide to run for office, The Atlantic will be the very last to know. So she will. And by the way, the reason that this is sort of controversial is she had her 2 embarrassing runs for office. First of all, in 2022, where she narrowly lost to Katie Hobbs, and then insisted for years after that the election had been rigged, when it turned out that no, there were just a lot of Republicans that voted for other Republicans, but then voted for Katie Hobbs rather than her because she just sucked as a candidate. And then she lost in 2024 against Ruben Gallego. As a result of that, she swore that she would not run for office again. And I imagine a lot of Republicans were like, oh, thank God, at least we don't have to deal with that anymore. So you can understand why they'd be worried about her going back on that and want to leak it to The Atlantic. Anyway, Luke, what do you make of this?
You know, I've had friends who got really enamored with a girl and would give them flowers, and then the girl wouldn't really seem into them. And then later kind of went in for a kiss, the girl swerved. And at some point as a friend, as a bro, you have to pull your friend aside and say, she doesn't like you. She just doesn't like you. And I think that that's something that people around Kari need to do, is tell her they just don't like you. We don't, the Arizona voters, American voters, they've said no. You gotta stop trying because it's getting embarrassing. And it's so brutal because staffers have such a reason to encourage you into running for stuff, because then they have a job. For her own aides to be like, I don't know about that, Kari. I think I saw too in reporting that she said she wasn't gonna run for anything again. So then she's also flipping around on that. But it tells you a little bit about the mindset of some of these politicians. Like, I feel like the ideal politician goes, I saw an opening where I thought I could do good, and I put my name into it and saw if the voters were interested in me. And then if they get rejected, a real public servant minded person goes, okay, they don't think I'm right for elected office. I'm going to go see if I can do good in a different way. But the mind of a narcissist says, no, I am owed this power. I am owed this position, and I'm just going to keep trying until I find a way to get into some position. And I love how she's kind of going down. It's like she ran for governor and then she ran for Senate, and now she's like, okay, I'll just take a Congress seat. Can you give me something, damn it?
Yeah, although you could go a little bit farther than that. You're talking about how she feels owed for something. I'm going to say something crazy. I'm going to say something stupid. Could you not run for like school board? Could you not run for like state representative?
But she's Kari Lake.
She's Kari. I mean, I'm Kari Lake.
She should be president.
You know my name because I've failed in so many elections. I'm a famous person. Run for a lower level office. Don't you have to earn the trust of the voters? Well, evidently you do actually have to earn the trust of the voters because they don't trust you. But no, for her, it's like, no, I deserve all the power immediately, even though I've never done anything for constituents. She went is destroying the voice of America or whatever. Have you considered like going to your district and organizing or something, like setting up a nonprofit, like actually doing something for the people? They never go in that direction. It's just, I have money, I know people, I should be the most powerful person in the country. And I will never understand that perspective. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for not understanding perspectives in this first hour. We do have more coming in the aftermath, though. Luke will be here, so definitely stick around if you're watching live. For the rest of you, thank you, those listening on the podcast and all that. And we'll see the rest of you in just a little bit. Welcome back to the Aftermath, one and all. Thank you for being here. More news to come. First, don't forget about our sponsor, Noble Mobile. Save money by using your phone less and get unlimited data for just $50 a month at tyt.com/switch. Let's jump into some acknowledgements of those out in the audience. Let's start on Twitch. Mr. Unknown's been here for 61 months. Thank you. Octo Squiddies at 66 and says one more month, which I'm pretty sure is a 6-7 thing. So let me just ban Octo Squiddies from the chat. And Skittlebutts at 62 months says he's prettier when he smiles. Is that a reference to the Caitlin Collins thing? I'm not sure, but thank you for the 62 months. I do appreciate that. Shadow Jacker Dragon says in a super chat, one of the good things coming out of Bad Lawyer Barbie's hearing are all the new DBZ, it's over 50,000 memes. That's funny, actually. I haven't seen any of those.
It's so funny. Like anytime anyone questions you about something, just go, the Dow's over 50,000.
Exactly.
So good.
Yeah, if my wife asked me to do the dishes, I ain't gonna point her to the NASDAQ so fast.
In this economy?
Yeah, it's literally in this economy. Anyway.
It is.
Okay, well, that said, let's talk about some more news, starting with this.
Here to show our appreciation, the trophy says the undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal. Thank you, sir.
I actually love this. I love this because the coal lobbyists or whatever get together and they have this trophy that they give to Trump. And it's the undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal, which is stupid and all that. So that's what they landed on. But how long did they consider making it the beautiful, clean coal peace prize? I know that it came up. I know that they talked about it and they were probably like, that's a little bit too far. He might see past that. And I don't think that he would have. I think he would have grinned like a dumb kid receiving the Coal Peace Prize. But they didn't go with it, maybe next year. So here he is getting another trophy because he likes getting trophies, but also really because everybody knows that he likes getting trophies that don't mean anything. And that is so sad. If I realized, oh my God, everybody thinks that I'm pathetic and just like being given participation trophies, I would die. I would literally die. But Donald Trump just can't tell. He's just happy. He's got his stupid lump of bronze or whatever, and he's feeling good about himself. And let's hear his part of his acceptance speech when he got the dumb trophy.
Welcome to the White House, the men and women who light our cities, and you do things that people don't even understand. There's so much, you do so much. You heat our homes, fuel our factories, and turn natural resources into American riches and dreams. Our amazing coal miners, thank you very much, fellas, that's great. And I know you well, I know you well. I think I got about 97% of your vote. And you wouldn't want to do anything else. You wouldn't switch with a guy who had a beautiful penthouse apartment on Fifth Avenue. You wouldn't switch with that was me. I had a nice, easy life. And now I decided to do this.
So I've been paying attention to this administration for long enough to know that little weird thing he said. He's said that exact thing before. He's been in a room with miners, which admittedly he does love miners, and say they love mining. They would never switch no matter what. They don't want to be rich. They just want to mine. And I have no idea what he is talking about. I think they take the penthouse, actually. What the hell is going? Is your brain full of coal dust? What is going on in there? But anyway, yeah, no, he's super happy. They're heating our homes. They're doing all of that. Well, not that much. I mean, coal doesn't actually produce that much electricity in the United States anymore because of economic reasons. It's the literal second most expensive form of electricity. Literally, only nuclear is more expensive. Coal is outdated, wasteful, polluting, dangerous, and also not economically sound. The only person that really seems excited about it at this point is the undisputed champion of clean, beautiful coal, Donald Trump. Luke, what do you think?
It's so dumb. I feel dumb talking about it. Also, I know this has been remarked on so many times, why is he so bad at comprehending the English language? He gets up there and he's like, welcome everyone to, it's like he never even knows what event he's going to. The reference I made covering this today on my show, Luke Beasley on YouTube, check it out, is that, you know, those stories, I don't even know this real thing, but where like someone really starts losing it mentally in your family, but they loved going to the office. And so then you create a fake office for them with a fake phone and you let them write kind of like Creed, like write thoughts. Yeah, Creed thoughts on a document. And then you kind of let them go through the motions and then you give them employee of the month, even though they're not working for anybody. It's like that with him. To your point, how is he not humiliated by this? And what's funny is whenever the person says, I'm proud to present the undisputed champion of beautiful, clean coal, and they switched around too, he used things like clean, beautiful, whatever, award to Trump, everyone in the room goes, ha, 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 ha. And Trump's like, wow. So impressed that he's receiving this. And I don't know how he's not embarrassed by it. And then, of course, the most important aspect to this is that it feels like just out of spite, or maybe because minor is in the name of the thing he's thinking of, Trump is advocating to invest more in coal whenever he's simultaneously shutting down already finished projects with renewable energy that are cheaper and, yes, better for the environment. But it's like just the fact that it's worse for the environment feels like the reason he's doing it, not understanding that it's also just not, as you said, economically, logistically, financially reasonable.
Yeah, no, 100%. And they're wasting a ton of money on it. I mean, buying the electricity is wasteful. The government's also wasting a lot of money. So Trump has ordered the Pentagon to buy electricity specifically that's coal produced. So not like a free market or anything, not like we want the Pentagon to spend less money, so get whatever the cheapest electricity is. No, you will spend more to get, this is DEI for coal. Like I don't get it at all. They're gonna be upgrading coal plants that were gonna be shut down. So taking a bunch of our, literally hundreds of millions of dollars and throwing it into these failing, wasteful coal plants. This is so, like we were told for years, like, oh, you lefties, you don't get it. Nobody's gonna spend more money just to get like solar power. It's not that anymore. It's literally cheaper. But this is how self-destructive they are. It's their weird fascination with whale oil or whatever that's like sinking our economy. And I like your idea for a solution for this. Like, don't give him the statue. Give him, you know, trumpthoughts.com, www.trumpthoughts or whatever. Like that would be one Google Doc and we could avoid a lot of problems. I just want to show one other thing, by the way. First of all, graphic 5, coal plants provide about 15% of US electricity in 2024. Does everyone know that? Do you guys realize how little coal power is actually needed at this point as a percentage of our, it's weird, they act like it's this massive thing. And then they put out stuff like this. This is from Doug Burgum, the Secretary of the Interior. So not only are they trying to make a coal mascot, but what do you know? They're turning to AI yet again. AI, the conservatives' favorite tool for literally everything. Well, that's their use of AI. Somebody quickly responded with this. They're having fun with Coley the mascot there, but it's a little bit more realistic as to what effect coal burning actually has. Anyway, so look, inevitably, the issue is that if it's not economically sustainable, they can only prop it up for so long. And when a Democrat comes in, it's just people are not going to want to pay more for their electricity, especially as it's rising as much as it is with the data centers and everything, Luke. So I feel like this is a battle that we're going to win. They're just squeezing out as many pulmonary deaths as they can before it's over. Any other thoughts?
Well, now one reference, it does sound like he thinks that anyone who loses their job coal mining would want the equivalent of what you just explained with a fake office, would want to just go in and mine for the fun of it. I don't think he understands how difficult and harmful of a job that is. Let me just end on this. Someone on X post, I found this so funny. Mike Bovis said, I don't know this for a fact, but I think this is the first time in history that the current FIFA Peace Prize winner became the undisputed champion of coal. Big accomplishment.
That is pretty amazing, man.
It's the Trump equivalent of the EGOT.
Exactly. Somebody's going to work out what that acronym could stand for in this particular case. I'm a little bit scared in advance. Anyway, we have other news. We've been talking a lot about, like, you know, broad view of the country and everything. I want to focus in on what's going on in a state, in a pretty critical state, especially when it comes to the Senate race Oh, hold on, really fast. Jan Foolery points out, Hank Green has a fantastic video about how dumb coal is. I actually watched that fairly recently. It is a great video and people should track it down. Anyway, with that said, let's talk about Texas. Closing down the border was supposed to be great for the Republicans. It was supposed to be great for Texas Republicans. I mean, they hate migrants, they hate the border being open, so they should be super jazzed about it. But they're not actually jazzed about it because the only thing they love more than closing the border is being able to complain about how the border isn't closed. They love fear-mongering about that, and now they've lost that. So they got to find something else to fear-monger about. And unfortunately, I think that they turned to ChatGPT, which can't come up with anything new. It can only rehash what's already been done. And in this case, that's what they're doing. We can't talk about the border, so Islam? Maybe Sharia law?
Hey.
And so you're seeing it everywhere in Texas. It's 2003 all over again in the great state of Texas. So let's see, recently ads for Senator John Cornyn of Texas have touted his fight against radical Islam, the main threat to Texans, obviously. Texas Republican lawmakers created a Sharia-free America caucus in Congress. Governor Greg Abbott has labeled one of the nation's largest Muslim rights groups a terror organization. There was a Save Texas from Radical Islam dinner north of Dallas last month. Hey, Steve Bannon showed up. And so he went to a dinner party that didn't have Jeffrey Epstein? That's a great honor. The state Senate in Texas is weighing legislation requested by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick to ensure that Texans are, quote, never held under the heel of Sharia law, which could happen at any minute. Let's see, we have Ken Paxton, the other guy running for the Senate seat there. He's investigating a proposed real estate development east of Dallas as a potentially illegal Sharia city. And so they've been talking about it a lot. And what do you know? They've convinced some Republicans in Texas that this is really important. A poll recently said that concern about Islamic radicalism has been polling amongst the top issues for Republican primary voters there, despite the fact that it is an entirely made up thing. It doesn't exist. They're not taking over Texas. What the hell is wrong with you people? Dave Carney is a top political strategist for Mr. Abbott. He says, any event you go to, people ask about it. It's like the border used to be. What are you doing about Sharia law? What are you doing about the Muslims taking over the state? We should ban the burqa, one candidate said. The hijab, the abaya, the niqab, all those things that you just constantly see in the streets of Austin. No to halal meat. No to celebrating Ramadan. No, no, no. You see, by the way, also that candidate was an insurrectionist. What do you know? You see how fast it moves from no Sharia law on me to you literally can't practice Islam yourself. That was a pretty fast evolution. But I love the idea, Luke, that radical Islam is going to take over Texas when centrist Democrats can't even take over Texas. But for some reason, Islam's going to do it. What do you think?
I just Googled it to see, not that if the number was bigger, their point would be any more valid, but it is fascinating because they love their picking on the wrong 1%. And here you have Muslims making approximately 1.1 to 1.7% of the Texan population. They're taking over. And to that point, again, all of this actually with the trans issue, with Muslims here, you have such a perfect, because we're talking about the same percentage, but just two different metrics, distraction.
Yes.
Effort here, which is so that they don't have to talk about the top 1%. They're talking about some minority 1%. And if Republican voters and sometimes Democratic voters could realize that phenomenon, which is why a lot of what James Talarico's campaign is interesting, the way he's messaging in Texas to me, which is it's not left or right, it's up and down is kind of the framing of his campaign. And a lot of other Democrats too should use that message, because that is like the last multiple decades of especially Republican politics. And again, sometimes Democrats play into it too, which is getting you to focus on some other group than the people who actually hold the power and the people who actually prevent real progress. Yeah. But what's so funny, to your point, aside from just the scary language that's being used, is two points. Number one, this should, as bad as the rhetoric is be seen as sort of a positive indicator that they're panicking about their electoral chances because they're literally going back into their greatest hits. And that leads into point 2, which is really, y'all can't ever even think of new fear-mongering devices. I do feel like in 5 years, they're going to re-up the whole drag queen thing because that kind of went quiet. And then we're going to hear again about CRT. Like they don't have new ideas. And I just told you, I think it was in the break, about the debate I did on gay marriage, and it's sort of like, wait, they're going back to wanting to overturn gay marriage. Really? We're going back to like the Bush era of we got to prevent gay marriage. And then to hear Sharia law is just the most of them reaching back into their bag of greatest hits.
100%. Oh, they're so excited to be able to talk about it again and just repeat those talking points. I think they're getting bored, a little bit bored of talking about trans people. They've done it 24/7 for about 3 years now, 4 years. And I think that at some point they will get bored with it. And then as Skittlebook points out, in 2028, they'll bring it back again, probably. Anyway, we have a little bit of time. We have one more story. Let's jump into just one more thing. We've been tracking what's been going on over at CBS. Let's talk about it. Under the leadership of Barry Weiss, the CBS Evening News isn't just losing the respect of its audience, and the audience itself is also going away. They're also losing an increasing number of the former staff of that show who've made the apparent principled decision not to waste their experience and their talent on a program that's no longer committed to journalism, but instead is just committed to delivering regime-approved propaganda. And we have an example of that, a statement that was sent by a former CBS Evening News producer, Alicia Hasty, to New York Times media reporter Ben Mullen that says this. It talks about how sad she is to have to move on, but she says, there's been a sweeping new vision prioritizing a break from traditional broadcast norms to embrace what has been described as heterodox journalism. The truth is that commitment to those people and the stories they have to tell is increasingly becoming impossible. She had been talking about the commitment she had to making sure that people's stories were being told and all that, regular people. Stories may instead be evaluated not just on their journalistic merit, but on whether they conform to a shifting set of ideological expectations, a dynamic that pressures producers and reporters to self-censor or avoid challenging narratives that might trigger backlash or unfavorable headlines. Walter Cronkite once said in response to critics, if that is what makes us liberals, so be it, just as long as in reporting the news we adhere to the first ideals of good journalism, that news reports must be fair, accurate, and unbiased. Cronkite's idea is one of the best I've encountered. He understands that labels are inevitable, but standards are what matter. What defines journalism is not what critics call it, but whether it remains faithful to those principles. And finally, I've always taken comfort in the belief that if we hold fast to those first ideals, trust follows. But those ideals cannot stand on their own. They require vigilance, they require courage, and unfortunately, it's just not a place where it seems, I guess, even possible anymore on CBS. Thanks to Barry Weiss and the way that the network has surrendered to the Trump administration. Evidently, the New York Post says as of Tuesday, 6 of their 20 producers have already accepted buyouts ahead of impending layoffs. Because not only are they going to do ideological screening, but also you don't need as many journalists if you're not going to be doing journalism. So you can just fire a bunch of them, which I'll note they also did at the Washington Post. Luke, what do you make of all this?
Did you see, can you remind me, Tony, is it Dokapil?
Dokapil, I think, something like that. Yeah, the new CBS Evening News guy.
Evening News guy. So maybe those producers leaving are contributing to why the show is and I saw that as he was getting ready to assume that position, since Walter Cronkite was referenced, I can't remember what the quote was, but he said something like, I'm going to be the next Walter Cronkite, or people are going to be stunned by how Cronkite-y I'm going to be. And so then he gets on in one of his first broadcasts, and this is where I was like, I'm out. Now wait, before I say that, you have the bigger reasons. The attempt to suppress the story on the El Salvadoran prison, yes, and the behind the scenes ideologically skewed decisions that Barry Weiss is making, obviously trying to make it more of a MAGA friendly network, which again is not the sign of unbiased journalism, which was the essence of Cronkite's message. You're always going to have bad faith actors trying to pull you to their side by calling you an agent of the other side. If you always try to please everyone ideologically, you're going to be sacrificing actual journalism. And that's what we're seeing here. There's these outlets who got obsessed after Trump won the election with neutrality as opposed to objectivity, and making it appear like everything's a both sides issue as opposed to just reporting sometimes the facts will bolster one side's argument because they'll align more with the facts, and then sometimes it doesn't. And so that's the more substantive part of this. But the moment where I went, all right, I'm out on Tony already, was one of his first broadcasts was him literally saying, I salute you, Marco Rubio. You're the ultimate Florida man, because it was so crazy that Rubio was getting memed with different photos of him in different outfits. And he said, this is proof that people in Florida just love Marco Rubio. At the end of his monologue, he said, we salute you, Marco Rubio. And it was like, what the hell am I watching? This is so uncomfortable.
That should have been like a satirical segment on The Daily Show. That should not have been a serious segment on the CBS Evening News. You're totally right. That was a very strange moment. And by the way, I just want to point out, it isn't just that they're like losing their like workers and everything. As I said, these moves that Barry Weiss is making are not bringing in an audience. They are losing their audience, and they're sticking with it, which implies that they are not making these changes because they believe it's going to bring in money. They're making it for some other reason, and I don't think it's hard to figure out what. Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have. Luke, it's always a pleasure to get some of your limited and valuable time. Between now and when we see you next, where can people watch more of your work?
Just search Luke Beasley on YouTube, or if you're a podcast listener, if you like consuming content that way, I am on all the podcast platforms. And John, it is always such an honor.
Thank you so much. Everybody, by the way, be on the lookout for Luke's appearance on Piers Morgan, which I'm now very excited for. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for being here. We've got one more day to close out the week. It's going to be the last appearance of Brett Ehrlich for a couple of weeks. He's going to do the show, and then he's going to head over to Japan for a while. So definitely show up, have some fun to close out the week. For now, though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.